Welcome to Unit 1 in our New Mexico history class. This is an important unit because we lay the groundwork for everything that we're going to do in our class over the next 2 weeks. I'm super excited to get into the intersession with all of you. I know that these are intensive, and if you haven't done an intersession before, please do ask questions whenever you have them. Look for peers who will be there to support you and help you as well. I always have a great experience as the instructor in the intersession because we work so closely together, even though it's an asynchronous course. I feel like we make a lot more connections than sometimes happens during the full term in an online class. So that's one of the benefits of an intensive intersession course. In this unit, we're going to not only introduce ourselves to one another, but we are going to explore the discipline of history, figure out what it is as a field, what it means to think historically. We're going to talk about the different kinds and categories of sources that historians use when interpreting the past. We're also going to get started with Twitter and our course timeline. And so those are a couple of things that are kind of more technical in nature, just in terms of making sure everyone is up and running on the various platforms that we're using in our course. But there's also a purpose behind those. So for the Twitter assignment here, it'll come after you've already done some reading and a discussion about the nature of the field of history. That point, then you'll go onto Twitter and you'll answer a question about primary and secondary sources. What is the distinction? You'll share a link to a primary source, to a secondary source, and you'll ask a strong historical question. And so again, it's kind of just laying groundwork and working on some of those building block types of pieces that we need to consider when we study history before we start to study New Mexico's history. The timeline, we're going to place ourselves on the timeline. And so we'll notice, for a long time, the events we'll be studying will be very distant from our own lifetimes. But as we get closer to the end of our course, we'll notice some overlap and see kind of where we fit into history. So it's a way of, by putting ourselves on the timeline, it's a way of getting to know Tiki-Taki and how to use it. But it's also a way to think about how we fit into the history that we're studying. So those are kind of the actual assignments, the skills we're going to be working on. I'm very excited to hear from and learn your thoughts about history. It's a dynamic field that is ever-changing, and for a lot of good reasons. So history is not some static list of names and dates that you're supposed to memorize, but instead it's a series of questions, ways of thinking about how we can find as many perspectives as possible on the past to best understand what happened in the past. Because unfortunately, we are distant from the past. It has been described as a foreign country by one writer. And so we have to think about what it was like for people who lived in different times and sometimes different places other than our own. And we have to think about how can we know something about that time and place? How do we know what we know? What are the limitations and the strengths of those sources? And how can we, again, put together the best picture as possible? History is something of a puzzle. It's doing detective work. And so I look forward to getting into all of that with you and thinking about history in those dynamic ways. Please do reach out with questions whenever you have them. I try to be as available as possible always, but especially during the intersession. So send me an email, send me a text. You can contact me on Twitter, whatever works best for you. I try to be very responsive in all of those various forms of communication. So again, looking forward to getting to know you all, and looking forward to our intersession.